Well, my name is Donna Golub, and I'm the executive director here at A Positive Approach to Teen Health. I am the mom of 3 adult children and the grandma to 6. So I have grandchildren from 14 years old, almost 15, all the way down to my youngest one is just 2 months old. So I have quite the variety. I'm really blessed. Most of them live close by, and I'm super involved in their life. So I love talking about being a parent and being a grandparent, and there is no such thing as being perfect at either one. And as much as I knew when my children were little, I realized the older I get that I didn't know nearly as much as I thought I did or as much as I could have. So when we have the opportunity to bring someone in and have conversations, especially someone who is and familiar and trained working with adolescents, I think it's really important that we provide support. You know, most of what we do here at A Positive Approach to Teen Health is very student focused, and we provide them with a lot of risk prevention education, and we work at providing them with the sources they need to grow to be successful and healthy young adults. But I think it's equally important that we support the staff that work with all of those young people, and also with the parents who are dealing with the day-to-day ins and outs of parenthood, especially around adolescence when so much is happening. So today we have with us Louise Clark, and I actually met Louise, if you want to use the word met, through Facebook. I was looking at some podcasts and some other things on social media, and that's where I first ran into her and her work. So most of you, I think, were invited through our e-blast, so you've already seen the bio that we presented. But Louise is a certified parent coach and a mindfulness coach. She is the podcast Parenting in the Thick of It. And she, I'm sure, can share with you links to the best way to find her if you would decide you'd like to follow her and learn more. She gives parents the practical tools that they need to help them better navigate the tough parenting moments and life in the thick of adolescence. And not just adolescence, parenting in general. But our focus today is going to be more around that adolescent time period. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Louise and allow her to introduce herself and tell you a little bit about herself and get our program started today.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Donna. It's a pleasure being here. I'm looking forward to supporting you through the next couple of hours. A little bit about me and how I got to where I am. I am a mum of 3 kids, as I put in the chat box. I have a 20-year-old son who's in his second year, just finished his second year at university. I have an 18-year-old daughter who is a skier. She's a freestyle skier and looking to fly high for years skiing. And I have a 16-year-old in grade 10 in Whistler, British Columbia in Canada, which is where I live. I'm very lucky to live in a beautiful ski resort. You will hear from my funny accent that I'm originally from Scotland, and I left there when I was a teenager, late teenager, and I've lived in many places around the world and landed in Canada about 20 years ago. So my path is I'm actually a sports physiotherapist by trade. I had private practices and that was my gig. And when I moved to Canada, I was going to have to completely requalify and spend a year, my 4th year physio again, repeat it all in order to get my license to work here. And I had 3 kids under the age of 4, no family, and a husband that traveled a lot. So that was not going to happen. And winding the clock forward, we were very lucky to be invited into a parenting group with a friend of ours who called on a whim one day and said, I've got a coach, we're going to do some parenting classes. I need to know whether you and Simon are in or out. And I'm like, I asked some questions. He goes, no, you just have to tell me. I'm in, we're in. So we started this parenting journey when my eldest was 3. So that's now 17 years ago. And believe it or not, that same group with 8 couples and the parent coach are still going strong. We meet We only meet 3 times a year now, but we've met 10 times a year for the best part of 15 years. And it was through this coach that I kind of got developed an interest in this work. And he, years and years and years ago, suggested that I did some qualifications and became a parent coach myself. So that's where I am now. And I have done many years of training through the Parent Coach Institute, which is an affiliate of the University of Seattle. I've done an Adlerian parenting course, and I've worked with Dr. Shefali Tsabary, who is Oprah's favorite parenting expert. I've worked with her for years. So I spend my days doing one-on-one private work with clients. I have run group coaching programs. And then I also have my podcast, as Donna said, with Parenting in the Thick of It show, which currently has, I think, 520 episodes or so on there. So lots of resources and support for parents out there. And I have blogs and various other things. I did put my website in the chat box. It's yourparentingpartner.com. And you can find anything about me through the website, all the tabs along the top. So when Donna reached out to me, we had a conversation and a chat, and we decided that we would talk today, or I would talk today, about how do we manage screens and devices as parents, because it is a beast of a thing to try and navigate. It is so pervasive, it is so persuasive, and it is so prolific that I don't think any of us could have imagined a world that we are in now. The pandemic has compounded the problem. We all probably had problems and challenges with it pre-pandemic. And now many of the parents I work with, certainly the whole subject of how do we manage our kids' devices? How do we help them set the boundaries, hold the limits? How do we deal with the pushback? How do we get them to sleep? How do we get them to wake up when they're attached to this thing that they are, highly addicted to? The virtual world is so shiny, it's so exciting, it's so fast. And the really unfortunate thing with it in my books is that all these platforms, the social media platforms and gaming platforms, are orchestrated perfectly to cause our bodies to release chemicals in response to what we're seeing. And it's those chemicals, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the cortisol that is released, that our kids and we become addicted to. So we get the next hit and we can't put it down. And I know just how difficult it is. If I'm doing something and I hear my phone go ting ting, we all are dropped. We're like, ooh, we just want to see who it is, because we've become more instant. We've become less patient. We can't delay gratification. The kids can't tolerate frustration. They're bored if they're not on it. So we thought we'd talk about that, and also how on earth, with this beast of a thing that's in our kids' pockets, how do we navigate homework? How do we support them to do their homework when the homework is competing with this platform that's all the kids want to do? And once they're hooked into it, they're not thinking homework. They're not thinking that you asked them to unload the dishwasher or walk the dog. They're not thinking it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I should really get to sleep. They're hijacked and hoodwinked by it. And I actually heard an amazing phrase that I wrote down just last night. I'm watching Yellowstone with Kevin Costner, which is fantastic if you haven't seen it. But someone in it said, it was a teacher, and she was going to see her students, and she'd asked them to meet her outside so that they would be less distracted and wouldn't be sitting on their phones. And of course, she arrives in the little nice area where they're all sitting, and all of them were sitting glued to their phones. And she said to them, you guys are hypnotized by a virtual world that doesn't exist. And I thought, what a magnificent phrase. Hypnotized by a world that isn't real. And this is the challenge we face. And how, I know with my 16-year-old, it's very hard to get him off his phone. So how do we do that? I thought we'd talk about that. And then many parents often, off the back of it, are challenged and stressed because their kids are unmotivated. And I think we see this a lot with kids right now. The only thing that seems to motivate them is the device, is Fortnite, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. So they're motivated to be on that, but the motivation is chemical. We can absolutely guarantee it's chemical. And you know, it's very shiny, it's fast paced, it's what they claim to want to be doing. The real world has become too slow for them. And I always say, you know, yes, sometimes it's a problem what they're doing online, but more than that, it's what they're not doing offline that is the problem. Their brains, and I think you guys have done a session on the brain science and what's happening to the adolescent brain. And in a nutshell, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for all the executive functioning skills, it's the area behind the forehead. It starts developing age 5 to 7, and it finishes developing age 22 to 25. If we want our kids' prefrontal cortex to be wired to develop skills in the real world, they have to be in the real world in order to rewire the brain for the real world. Because during adolescence, the whole brain, all the wiring is taken apart and reintegrated and put back together. And the brain has a natural pruning system whereby it prunes pathways that are not being utilized, which is actually very smart. It's saying, you know, if you want to wire me for learning math and playing volleyball and being outside, I'll wire to that, but you need to give it to me so that I wire it for you. And then anything they're not doing or pathways that are not being utilized, those pathways get pruned because the brain goes, they're not using, he's not using that or she's not using that pathway, we don't need it. So the danger is if they spend all their time in the virtual world, their brains are going to be rewired during adolescence in accordance to the virtual world. So it's neither wonder that they won't develop the skill set required for the real world when everything's being wired for a world that doesn't exist. It exists, but you know what I mean. So how do we motivate them to spend time in the real world when all they want to do is be on these? So I thought we could talk about that and help you guys, you know, find a starting point, because it's, you know, I could speak for a week on this subject. It's vast, it's complicated, but the one thing, if you leave this what do we call it, lecture, presentation, with one big takeaway, it's going to be this: it all boils down to you. And it all boils down to how you show up in the face of whatever your kids, adolescents, students are doing. And by that, I mean, how do you respond to them? More often than not, because of what they're doing, we don't like a lot of the things they're doing because they're hijacked by the virtual world. We become very reactive to it. So we react to them, and our reactivity levels are high. And when we react, we can't come from the place we need to come from if we're wanting to lead, guide, influence, support, coach, or parent them. Because when we come from reactivity, we're coming from judgment, criticism, blame. You're not good enough. Why are you doing this? You didn't do that. You should do this. You shouldn't do that. We're coming from that space. We're coming from the lecturing, old school, authoritarian, closed mindset, you know, fixed mindset, negative energy. And we're bringing that to the table when we're reactive because it's all we can do when we're triggered by what we're seeing. Our brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze because we don't like what we're seeing. It panics us, it scares us. They're on their phones all the time. They're not doing their homework. We know they've got an assignment to do. It's pressing, it's due tomorrow. and they're on their phones and it's 10 o'clock at night and they're on YouTube or Fortnite. So we get triggered, we go into fear. Our amygdala, which is the other main part of the brain that is, I talk about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala is the reptilian brain. It's the piece of us that's responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. We have to have it. It's great. We need it when there's a bear in the garden. We don't need it when the kid's on their phone. But when we're in fight, flight, or freeze, we will fight the situation, freeze in the situation, or flee, run from the situation in reactivity to the situation. So we have to find a way to stay wise, to stay in our prefrontal cortex executive functioning part of the brain, so that we can regulate ourselves, which is a function of the executive functioning. Regulate ourselves, stay cool, calm, and connected and collected. We need to be able to plan, prioritize, inhibit. We need to be able to manage time. We need to be able to support our kids while they are reactive. And so if there's one thing you leave with today, it's this, that if you are responding from your fight, flight, or freeze, in other words, you're reactive, the situation usually goes downhill. It's a slippery slope. We enter the drama, we dial into it, we become reactive. That's when we start nagging, shouting, maybe yelling. We're resorting to negative forms of discipline in the heat of the moment because we can't think straight. You're grounded. Give me your phone. Give me your phone. You're not having that for the rest of the week. I'm sick of this type of stuff. And we all do it. I've done it myself. Instead of being governed by our wise leader, our executive functioning, the prefrontal cortex, where we can look at the situation and go, I wonder what's going on here. Being open, being curious, and with compassion and empathy and dignity, we can work out what is driving the behavior. Why is this child not doing their homework, knowing they have to hand it in tomorrow, and they're on their phones? And when we enter the room from that space, we're far more likely to be able to actually meet our kids' needs and support them. So it all boils down to you being able to somehow find the space, pause, take a breath, repeat a mantra. You might even have to leave the room for a second just to regain, recalibrate, reorientate, to shift from this space that's terrifying and reactive to a space that is going to actually help the situation. The amygdala, when we're in the amygdala, we will fuel the fire. When we are being governed by what we should be governed by, we will put water on the fire. So it really does come down to, in every moment, us being able to stay cool, calm, and connected with our kid in order to meet the needs and meet the moment. And many parents think, well, that's just giving in, that's being permissive. It's not. It is far from it. In fact, when we become reactive in the heat of the moment, we're far more likely to end up giving into it because we can't cope, because we're so fed up that we just go, I don't know what to do. Stay on your phone, stay up all night, I don't care. And they get away with it. Versus being able to enter the moment, open, curious, compassionate, with empathy, accepting it as it is. It's 10 o'clock, he hasn't done his homework, and I need to help him here. What can I do? Well, I need to stay in this space so I can actually see if I can support him. He might not take the support, or she might not take the support. But then I'm at least in a place where there's a chance of us being able to find a solution to the problem in the moment. But when we dial into the drama, take their behavior personally as a reflection of us, blame them, criticize them, punish them, threaten them, it doesn't work. the homework's not done, they're less motivated to do it. We fracture the connection we have with them, and now we have a rift between us, and the homework's still not done. So that's one, it is, if you leave with anything, leave with that, knowing, how can I stay present here? How can I stay calm despite the fact they haven't done it, or they should have done it, they said they would do it, they're home late. How do I stay calm in the moment? And we have to have a toolbox as parents to allow us to show up calm in the moment. And we also, I believe, have to do some work in advance of the next moment. As in, we do some inner work to really look at our patterns, look at our behavior, look at our, where do I parent from? Where does it come from? You know, do I default to what my mum was like or my dad was like? Why is that? If we can understand that, what we bring to the table and why we show up the way we do in conflict and under duress and stress, and then we develop an awareness for this pattern, for our pattern. And when we're aware of it, we can sniff it out before we go too far. So I'll pause there and see, because Donna's probably got some questions, and there might be some questions in there so that I don't get too ahead of myself.
Yeah, Louise, I'd love for you to kind of give us an idea of what it sounds like to be present in the moment and to offer that support. Like, I know you said, you know, fine, the frustration, we've all been there. We all thought when you said it, I thought I could see myself, fine, you know what? Forget it. You want to stay up all night?
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm out of here. Because you don't want that push and pull. It seems like a tug of war is always happening, right? And you're right, especially now we're with kids who they're on their devices all day for school in many cases, and yet they still want their devices all night for fun, whatever that looks like to them. What does it sound like to be present and in the moment? What does that conversation sound like?
Okay. I mean, I have to kind of preface that by saying, you know, there's a lot that goes into what that conversation sounds like and the context of it. So the conversation that I might have with my son, I can go through that and how I would show up with him in that event. But I have to lay the foundation for the context I speak to with my son is that there are boundaries and limits around his screen time and use. So you have to, every single conversation is unique to every person. And so, yes, you can hear what I will say, but it really will only be relevant to you if your situation is very similar to mine, right? So my kids have never slept with their phones. They've never had consoles, gaming stations, laptops, desktops in their bedrooms. Do I believe that is right? I'll be opinionated and say I would strongly advise it. But there'll be people listening who have kids with game stations in their rooms. So the context of my conversation might not be so relevant for them. So I just need to preface it with that. I don't recommend phones and devices and anything in the bedrooms. If they're in there, there's maybe a conversation to be had about trying to get them out. But that might not work for everybody. And I'm not saying that's wrong. If you can work with it and you're still able to hold the boundaries and hold the limits, and your kids are not up all night on them because they're in their rooms and you're sleeping somewhere else and you don't know what's going on, then you know that's okay. So everybody's context is different and unique. So mine don't have anything in their rooms. If there's one thing I've been super strict on, it's putting boundaries around their sleep. It is so important to me as a person. I get 8 to 9 hours sleep a night. I can't function without it. And my kids now, even the ages they are, they go to bed early and they get their 9, 10 hours of sleep a night. And my 16-year-old, you know, I'm saying 10 o'clock hasn't done his homework and it's due tomorrow. My conversation is going to be quite different because he goes to bed at 10:30. So my conversation is not going to be, you know, how are we going to do it? Okay, you want to do it tonight? because that's not really negotiable for me, because he needs to be in bed at 10:30. I think sleep overrides this assignment that's late. And for me, he needs to realize that the assignment should have been done a couple of days ago when he had time, not leaving it till 10 o'clock at night. So for me, sharing how I will speak might not be relevant to all of you, but the conversation would be, regardless of your let's say regardless of your boundaries, and you go into their room or you go to the dining table in the family room and they're on their phones playing Fortnite, or your daughter's on TikTok scrolling through, tap, tap, like, tap, tap, like, and you see that she's doing this. So I would go over and I would just kind of cruise around the table, or I might sit on her bed and I would say, how's it going? What are you up to? And depending on how they respond to me, if they're flippant and like, fine, why are you in here? No, I just wanted to come in and say hi. Well, I'm okay. You don't need to stay. You know, you don't know how they're going to respond to you. But if they're like, oh, hey, mom, and they're open to it, then I would say, what are you up to? And they might go, oh, I'm doing my homework. And you'll go, then I often play ignorant and I say, oh, what homework have you got? Oh, I've got an assignment. When's it due? Tomorrow. Oh, when did you get it? Oh, I got it a couple of weeks ago. And how's it going? Are you nearly done? No, mom, I haven't started it. Oh, how are you feeling about that? Really stressed, mom. I haven't done it and I should have done it yesterday or the 2 days before. I totally get it. I've done that before when I was your age. It's horrible. It's scary because it's 10 o'clock now and you're probably wondering whether you're going to get it done or not. Is there enough time? Yeah, mom, I don't think there's enough time tonight. I don't want to stay up all night. Like, yeah, no. So I'm empathizing, validating, reflecting her emotions back to her so she can see herself in me. There's no judgment, no blame, no criticism. I am in there as if I would be beside a girlfriend who was in the same situation. I'd be very empathetic. I'd be very supportive in the moment. I wouldn't be saying, well, you should have done it 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't say that to a girlfriend, but yet something in me thinks I can say it to my daughter. So we need to cut that whole piece out in the moment. So I'd go on supporting her. And then I would ask her, it depends what age she is. I haven't even premised that. 16. I would ask her, what do you think you can do right now? Well, I don't know. And she might go into a panic. So you would support her in the panic. You're not trying to fix it in the moment. You can't fix anything if they are emotional. You have to let them feel the feeling. Feelings first, logic last. Sit in the feeling with her. Let her get emotional. She might blame you. She might suddenly switch and become very aggressive towards you. Nothing to do with you. She's projecting her inner lack and fear onto you in that moment. It's our job to be the punching bag. Don't react to it. Don't take it personally. It's her trying to cope. Feel the feelings, let her feel them, validate them, reflect them back to her, mirror her feelings. See if you can get through it. She might settle. And you might say, so what are you going to do? What is the plan? Note, I'm not giving her the plan. I'm not giving her my agenda. She's 16 years old. She wants to be in control. She's out of control now, and she's not appreciating the fact that she's left it this long. So I'm not going to give her my agenda, because that's going to make her feel even less in control. And she's going to think that I'm trying to control her. And I'll ask her, what do you want to do? I don't know, mum. And if she says, what would you do, mum? Then you could say, well, you've got a couple of choices. How late are you prepared to stay up and do this? And she might say, mum, I'm so tired. I just don't know if I can do it. Mum, will you write me a note and say I'm sick? No, I'm not going to write you a note and say you're sick. But, so you don't want to stay up. Do you want to stay up for an hour and try and do an hour of it? At least put a plan together. I could do that. Would you like me to go and get you a hot chocolate? Do you want a piece of toast, bowl of cereal? I'll bring it in here. You can get that. I'll read my book on the bed if you want. If you don't want to be on your own, I'll sit here and read my book. And she might go, Mum, that'd be really nice. And then you say, okay, so you're going to do the plan, then what? Then I'm going to go to bed. And then, Mum, I've got to face her in the morning. What am I going to do? It's okay. You got it. Let's deal with that in the morning. Let's do what you can now. We'll cover that in the morning. So that's how that conversation would look like. Now, let's change that up a bit. And you've gone into, what am I going to say, your son, because he's 14 and he's on Fortnite and it's 10 p.m. and he hasn't done his homework. And you might go over and say, hey, bud, what's up? Oh, nothing, Mum. I'm okay, Mum. Well, it looks like, are you doing homework or have you finished your homework? Because it looks like you're, playing Fortnite. Yeah, I finished my homework. Oh, can I see it? What was it? No, Mum, don't check. Have you really done your homework? Well, maybe not all of it. Are you doing your homework or are you on Fortnite? Well, I'm just finishing a game of Fortnite, Mum. I'm just finishing. Okay, you need to finish it now. But Mum, I'm going to lose all my points if I finish it now. You're so mean, Mum. You always do this. You always come in. You take away my phone when I'm in the middle of my game. Say, okay, your homework's not done. That's the priority. You told me you were doing your homework. It's not done. So you need to come off Fortnite now. No, I'm not. You need to put it off now. If you'd done your homework, I might have let you finish the game, despite the fact you should be in your bed. I might have let you play for 10 minutes more if that meant you didn't lose all your points. You need to finish it now. I'm not finishing it. If you don't finish it, I'm going to have to take your phone off you or I will shut down the Wi-Fi. Your choice. What do you want? Okay, take my phone. Okay, thank you. Now, then you enter the next conversation. What homework have you got to do? Well, I've got this and this and this. Okay, well, it's 10 o'clock tonight, right now. You need to be in bed at 10:30. Do you want to work for half an hour or would you rather just go have a shower, get into bed, and you'll have to tell the teacher in the morning that you haven't done the homework? I'll just tell the teacher in the morning that I haven't done the homework. Okay, so that's how I would manage that. But I would be firm with that. Take the phone away. And if they won't give it to you, shut the Wi-Fi off, change the password, because they are geniuses at getting around passwords. They've even got fingerprints, these kids. They know their way around it. They get back onto it like that. So, I would have that conversation, but in both those situations, I was not reactive. And you might be saying, well, that's all very well and good because you're sitting in your office now, it's easy. And it is easy here for me to say that. And it is far harder for me to not be triggered. I'm a mum just like you. I get triggered. Just because this is my work doesn't let me off the hook. I still lose it every now and again. It gets to me and I cannot show up not reactive. I can't do it. I can do it for a vast percentage of the time because I've trained myself to do it. It's work, it's effort. Always don't react. Don't say it. Don't take it personally. I'm saying this to myself all the time. Take a breath. It's okay. He doesn't mean it. He's scared. And I'm able to dial out the drama. But there's times where I can't. So don't look at me and think, oh, honestly, she thinks she can do that all the time. I can't. But I can do it for a lot of the time. And I just do whatever I can in the moment. And there's times where if I could record some of the conversations, my son being snippety and rolling his eyes and not, there's wrappers on the coffee table. He hasn't taken his bowl to the sink. There's a hoodie on the floor. There's crap everywhere and his homework's not done and he's on his phone, just like you, because that's what teenagers do. So, that's what my conversation would look like. And I'm in that moment, I might go and say, hey, you said you would take your bowl to the table, to the sink. You need to do it now. Mom, I've just started my homework. No, you need to do it now. Oh, you never ever can let anything just go. It's always got to be this. I'm like, you need to take your bowl to the sink. And wait, while you're going, take the wrapper and take your hoodie, pop your hoodie in your room and take it all to the sink. And he'll stomp off mad. I'm horrible, but I don't react. And he goes and he does it and he sits down and 2 minutes later he'll go, oh mom, look at the cat. She's all rolled up like a little mouse. And I'm like, I know, she's so sweet. They flip from we're being so mean and nasty and the only parent who sets limits on things to, oh mom, come and see the cat with me. She's so cute. So they flip from one to the other. They don't, once she's told me I'm mean, that's gone. Now he's back on the couch, the cat's there, new moment. It's us that hang on to the fact that, you know, bloody hell, now you're all nice because you want something, or, you know, we come to the moment laced with history, laced with what's happened all day. And it stops us even just being on the couch with the cat and the child, because a moment earlier we were triggered by it and we can't get over it. And the reason I say this is it's this ability to be present to what is. Let it go. You've dealt with it. Don't take it personally that you're the meanest mom and the only mom. That's gone now. And to the next moment, and you might be able to connect. A good chance you will, if you can let go of everything else and just be in this moment, non-reactive. So the conversation is going to look different in every home, but you have to take into consideration, what are your boundaries? What are the limits? And parents often say to me, how do you police the limits? And I say, it's relentless. My job is never done when it comes to policing the limits on the phones. And it's not because my kid's bad and ignores me and is just being defiant. It's because those systems hijack them. And they cannot even remember what they were doing 2 minutes ago because they're back in the virtual world, hooked in. And for every reminder we give them, they are being reminded 10 times to stay in it with all their notifications. Look at me, like this, share this, add this, do the streak. And I'm saying, you need to put your phone down. And everyone else is saying, stay on it, look at me, listen to me, watch me, read me, like me. And I'm going, no, you need to put your phone down. So we're up against a tsunami of reminders to them to stay in the program. And it's our one little lonely voice out there saying, come off it. So I will never, ever relinquish my job of saying, you need to put it down. You need to stop playing. You need to go do something else. And I'm like a stuck record. And occasionally I'm just like, whoa, I'm done. But more often than not, I'm just like, no phones at the table. You need to leave it in the kitchen. No, don't take it to the bathroom. No, you don't need it when you're going downstairs to do the cat litter. No, give me your phone. It's all the time because that's their life. And if I want my 16-year-old to stay in this world, I believe as long as he's under my roof, it is my job to keep him off it. And some of you might say, but then if you're always reminding him what's going to happen when he leaves for college, at that point, I'm going to have to hope that my reminding him and the patterns that we've set up for over the time while they've been in the house might carry. But I also know that the chemical dependency on those phones and the kick they get, the high they get from it, no one can interfere with that. That we're up against an impossible reality, I believe. But I know certainly with sleep that my eldest two who are, you know, they're living out, but they're back home, they're away, they're back home. I know that their sleep habits are pretty good because that's been the routine, it's been the pattern. They don't sleep with their phones. They don't want their phones in their rooms. My son does. My daughter doesn't want her phone anywhere near her while she's sleeping. She hates it. And she will leave it out by choice, not because I'm saying, she's 18, I'm 19. I'm not going to say, you can't sleep with your phone now. She's that age, she's old enough. It's her choice now. But my 16-year-old is not his choice yet because he's still living under this roof. So be aware of the patterns that are right now, that have been co-created. And if you want to change those patterns, you have to change your part in them. You can't force the change on another person. You have to be the one that breaks the pattern by you changing something in the co-creation. That will bring about a change. And you have to be committed to it. You have to be consistent. You have to be able to show up. If X, then Y. If X, then Y, every time. If they bring the phone to the table, then you have to take the phone away from the table. Every time. And hope maybe one day they will bring the phone to the table. But we can hope they still bring. But as long as you let them stay with their phones on the table, that's going to become the pattern. If they're in the car, that's another time you can ring fence. You know, if you're driving them, because we all drive them, no phones while you're driving me. I'm not sitting here with you on TikTok. I will sit here and I will listen to your music. You can share your music with me, which yes means he's on Spotify, but he's not just lost in that scroll. We're talking, you know, I'll talk about the song. So what things can you do to keep them out of it? And just know you have to be the reminder, and you have to be on it all the time to break the patterns.
That's excellent. Louise, let's just say that some of the people listening now are thinking, man, I wish I would have started that when, right? And there's a lot of bad habits, maybe for themselves. I'm even thinking to myself, when it's just my husband and I at home, sometimes we both have our phone at the table, and it frustrates me when he's on his phone, and I'm sure it frustrates him when I'm on mine. And we've miscommunicated because we're attached. So I'm just thinking, how do you suggest that we set these boundaries if they've not yet been set? And it's going to mean a life change, really, for us and for our kids. Where do we start?
Yeah, I never believe it's too late. Like, it's never too late. The later it is, the older they are, the harder it is, for sure. You know, your younger teen, you have still a bit more control in their lives than you do when they're, you know, 16, 17, 18. And then you've got temperament and everything that comes into it as well. You know, you have a kid who's my eldest is totally easygoing. If he was on his phone and I said, you know what, give me your phone, he'd just give it to me. He's like, whatever. But my daughter, if I'd said, you need to give me your phone, she'd say, I'm not giving you my phone. You know, I'd get a very different result from it. So it's never too late. And I think that regardless of the age, and Sandy just said, is there an age limit on not allowing devices in rooms? You know, I don't think you'll find anything that's going to say, you know, at what age should they be allowed a device in their room, and how. I don't think there is anything written to that effect, Sandy. But I always say to parents, trust your gut. What is your gut telling you? Sandy, what is your gut telling you? Do you think it's okay for them to have their devices in their rooms or not? And if they're in their rooms and you know they shouldn't be, that's not going to sit well with you. That's going to make you very reactive. That's going to make you lose your energy. It's going to make you feel overwhelmed, tired, frustrated, frazzled, because life is fundamentally out of alignment with what you know is right. So I always use that as your compass, as your guide. With regard to the boundaries and the limits, and if you haven't had any, you know, again, it's very hard to speak to this because I'm trying to generalize, and I steer away from generalizing because I want you to think, okay, you know, Jennifer might have a very different situation to Sandy, to me. So if I generalize, that general might not work with you, Jennifer. So you have to look at what is your context. But when it comes to boundaries and limits, I think we stand more of a chance of a boundary being set and lived within if we get our kids buy-in. In other words, if they are part of the construction of the boundary, what's it like? What is the limit? So sit each child down. So if you have a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, and an 18-year-old, the limits are going to be different for all three of them. You can't just say, okay, it's 2 hours for all of you a day on your phones. As if, wouldn't that be nice? But you can't do that because your 18-year-old is going to have very different needs to the 13-year-old. So you have to look at it bring it right in, narrow it down. Okay, so for the 13-year-old, what does that look like? What else is she doing? Is she playing volleyball? Is she going to swim meets? Is she socializing with friends? Is she spending all her time in her room? Is she with the family? Are you sitting down having family meals? Does she have breakfast with you? Do you have dinner together? Do you watch movies together? All of these things are going to come into play when you're trying to set a limit. But I always get their buy-in. I always ask them first, so that we're not coming in saying, we've decided, Dad and I have decided that you are going to only have an hour on your phones on Fortnite. You can choose whether you play Fortnite or TikTok or Snapchat, but it's an hour. That's it. They're going to feel not heard, not seen, and not understood. And we have to make sure our kids are seen, heard, and understood, that they feel important, that they matter, and that they belong. So how do we do that? We invite them to the conversation. How long do you think how long would you like to spend on Fortnite or Snapchat or Instagram a day? And they might say, 4 hours? And you might go, well, Dad and I we were thinking maybe 2. You're at 4, we're at 2. What are we going to do here? Then you might get a bit more detailed and say, well, how much time do you want to really spend on Instagram, TikTok? Let's write down, what platforms are you on? Let's write them down. She might write down TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. He might write down Fortnite and something else hideous. And you're going to say, how long do you need each day on them? Well, Mum, that's really hard to do because Snapchat's like text. Like it's a lot. Say, okay, that's fine. I get that. See, I'm agreeing with her. So over the whole course of the day, you're maybe not on it for an hour at a time. It might be 5 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 50. Is that more like it? Yeah. Okay, so big picture, how long do you think you need on Snapchat a day? She might go, well, maybe an hour and a half. Okay, you write that down. Instagram? Oh, Instagram's quick, Mum. I just have to do all my likes and all my this and go, okay, well, how long does that take? And then I might another time say, really, you have to do this? Why do you have to do it? Who says you have to do it? It's another conversation about helping them understand they are being controlled by an external force and they don't like being controlled. So if you say to them, well, you don't like it when I control you, so I'm surprised you like it when Instagram's got you. Absolutely up a creek without a paddle. I wouldn't say that to them if they're 13. But so get the times they want to spend, add it up, and it might come to actually 3 hours and 15 minutes. They wanted 4, you were 2, and then you're going to negotiate. But that's just the start of it. Then you've got the times, and they're pretty black and white. You've got an hour and a half on Snapchat, you've got 20 minutes on Instagram, 10 minutes on TikTok. How are you going to manage that? So either you use the apps that give them a certain amount of time on each device. And I, 5 years ago, was not a fan of those because I didn't believe it allowed them to be in control of it. It was an external thing controlling them. I don't believe they can control it anymore. I truly don't. I think there's very few kids who can go, oh, that's my hour and a half up. I better put my phone down. It needs to be just shut off and done. Unless, of course, now there's homework that comes into play. when they've done their homework, then they get the preferred activity. So all of that's going to come into these boundaries and limits as well. So you've got the time set now. They've kind of got a free rein as to when they are or not. Are you going to say, no, the non-preferred activities have to be done before the preferred? That's another conversation. Non-preferred being homework, a chore maybe, something else. That has to be done. Then they get the preferred, which is all the online stuff. Or it doesn't matter, as long as they do it all, they get it all. Then there has to be consequences for when they go over the limit, when they reset the password, when you find they've got a spare phone. I've worked with a client whose son, she'd found 8 iPhones. She kept taking one and he'd have another. She'd take it, there'd be another. They had 8 iPhones in their safe that he had got from friends. Every time they took his, he got another one. They were on it. So we have to then work out what's the consequence if they blow their time. What's the consequence if they haven't done their homework and it's 10 o'clock at night? Can you see now how the conversation I had and role modeled to you about what you do when the homework wasn't done is all going to be based on what are your limits? Because that's really the relevance. The homework's not done, but the limit is a certain amount of time on Fortnite, and he's still on Fortnite at 10, so he's blown through all his time on Fortnite. And for me, the most easiest consequence to put into place in the event of them blowing time on blowing their limits is however long they've gone over by, you take that off their allocation the following day. So if he's been on Fortnite for 2.5 hours and it should be an hour, then he gets none the following day because he is allowed an hour. So he's got none the following day and he gets half an hour the following day because that's the 1.5 hours that he went over tonight. The reason I do this is for consequences to be consequences, they have to satisfy 5 R's. This is really useful, practical information. The consequence has to be related and relevant. There's the 2 R's. Related and relevant to what they did. So they're on Fortnite for an hour too long. They lose Fortnite for an hour. It's relevant and related. It's like, well, it makes sense. I should have been on it for an hour. I went over it by half an hour. So tomorrow I only get half an hour. Totally logical. Reasonable, relative and related. It needs to be reasonable. It doesn't have to be harsh. They've gone over by 20 minutes. They lose 20 minutes the next day. Super simple. But you have to be the one the next day to say, no. We're setting a timer for 40 minutes because remember, you used today's yesterday. You used 20 minutes of today's yesterday. You have to set the timer and you will have to go make sure they're off it after 40 minutes. So it has to only be reasonable. It has to be reliable. In other words, you can consistently and rely on yourself, not them, to be able to see the consequence through. So they get the opportunity to learn from the mistake. And the last one is key because the last R is what will differentiate this consequence from being a potential punishment. It's if you can show up, remember I said it's all about how you show up. If you can show up respectfully while you are doling out, communicating the consequence. Because I could make, that's a very relevant consequence. They have an hour, they're allowed an hour on Fortnite a day. And today, your son goes over by half an hour. So tomorrow he's going to lose half an hour. So you'll say to him today, you know what, you've gone over the limit by 30 minutes. Just so you know, tomorrow you're only going to be 30 minutes. I know that's really tough. And I know that's going to be hard because most games on Fortnite take 45 minutes. But your choice, you can have half an hour or none tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you have to say to him, remember, It's just half an hour. To set the timer. Note, I've been very respectful. I've stepped into his experience. I know this is tough for you, and I know you didn't hear the timer, and I'm sorry I didn't remind you, but this is what has to be so that you learn. There's only an hour a day. It's totally respectful. Versus, okay, that's it. You never listen. You totally ignored the timer. Give me your phone. Give me it now. And tomorrow, you're not getting it for an hour tomorrow. You're only getting it half an hour tomorrow. And disrespectful in the way I am meeting him. I'm reacting. And then that becomes nothing more than a punishment in disguise. Yet the consequence is you're going to lose it for half an hour tomorrow. He's going to see it as a punishment because of the way your tone, your energy, your snippety. It's like, huh, you blew it, your fault. You're not getting it. It's like I'm taking it away. All through my voice, my tone, my energy, my body language. There's no compassion, no empathy. And you might be saying, well, he chose to blow it. Yeah, he did. But I don't think he did choose. I honestly, the compassion of me, like, it's hard for them to put it down. It's hard for us to say no when we're scrolling on Facebook. How many of us have lost 20 minutes, half an hour, idly scrolling through Facebook with no idea how much time we spend on it? It's the same for them. So as long as we are respectful in the way we handle the consequence, it will be a consequence. But as long as we deliver from a place of reactivity, from fear, it will just come across as a punishment. And kids don't learn from punishments. That's when they're going to think, you know, you'll build resentment, you'll harden their hearts, it's hard for them. They won't learn, and they'll be forced to lie, because anyone who knows they're going to be punished for something will struggle to tell the truth knowing they're going to be punished. So they're going to try their hardest to avoid the punishment, become manipulative. So, you know, there's so much that goes into the creation of boundaries and holding the limits and not dealing with the pushback. And Jay, the cool dad, said, you touched on not taking things personally when a child retaliates. You see, Jay, even in your language there, you believe the child's retaliating. They're pushing you. Can you change that language even? Because if you believe he's retaliating, you're going to react. If you believe he is simply acting from a place of like what's driving his behavior, you're going to be less defensive when you meet him. So even the language we use, the words we use. So can you share some tips on how parents, staff, co-workers can learn to detach from those moments to walk away not feeling guilty or shame for setting limits? There will be no guilt or shame for setting a limit that you know in your inner deep knowing, your intuition, your wisdom. If you are setting a limit from that place, you won't feel guilty about it. There's no room for guilt when there's intuition or shame. You will only feel shame about, shame is very much, I'm a bad dad. I'm a bad mom. I'm a failure. Shame is corrosive. It's about us. It's sabotage on us. Guilt is we feel guilty about an action. I could feel guilty about going to pick up my son at 10 when all his friends were being picked up at 10:30. There might be a bit of guilt. I feel a bit guilty about that. It's an action. But I don't feel shame because I don't feel I'm a bad mom for it. Shame is much more corrosive. So I don't believe we will feel guilt or shame if we're acting from our heart, from our intuition, from what we know, right? So how can we detach from the moments? It's different for when you're a co-worker or a teacher. It's much easier. I mean, teachers in the room will be able to vouch for this. Have we got a teacher here who is also a parent? because I'll bet, I'd put money on it, that when you are in the classroom, not with your kids, with other kids, you are already detached emotionally because they're not your kids. You're able to see the kid and see the behavior, and you probably don't take their behavior personally because it's not your child. You're not emotionally connected to them like you are your own child. So it's much easier to detach. You're not going to be so triggered by your students as you would be your child. If anyone is actually a teacher and parent in the group, type something in the chat bar and let me know if you find it easier to be detached with your students than you are with your kids. I'd be surprised if you were the same, because I haven't heard that before. So how do you detach in the moment from your kid? You have to stay out of fear. So we have to detach from the fear, not detach from the child. And almost see the child. I sometimes, when I'm really feeling triggered, I see the child, my child is, how would I respond to my friend's son if he had done what my son's done? Because how I would deliver would be very different if it wasn't my child. So I often say to parents, imagine it's not your child. Now, how would you respond? You will naturally be a bit more compassionate, a bit more empathetic. You're probably going to be naturally more curious to see, I wonder what happened, I wonder what drove the behavior, I wonder what's going on here. So to actually detach in the moment, take a breath. Just separate yourself from it for a split second, get onto your breath and follow your breath. Then deal with it. Or say a mantra in your head. Don't dial in. Stay out of it. Don't say it. Listen. Listen some more. These are things I say to myself to just keep myself out of it in the moment. And then I say to myself, don't take it personally, because I know he doesn't mean it or she doesn't mean it. Our kids can say some real things to us. And I just have to go, they don't mean it. And I see the words, I visualize like, I hate you, or you're a mean mom. I see the words and I almost see the letters just hit me and drop. I don't let them penetrate me, because once they do, I'm triggered into fear, into reactivity, and then I'm in, woof, ignite. I can honestly say that I do respond differently to kids that aren't mine. I actually am more hesitant to ask kids who aren't mine to remove from their devices. Yeah, Jennifer, I mean, that might be the case, that you find it harder to actually say to them, you need to come off your devices. I'm amazed at how many teachers that I hear from certainly my kids, how many teachers allow these students to be on their phones while they're in the classroom. I'm not criticizing the teacher, trying not to, but I'm like, if I was a teacher, there'd be a basket and I would be the meanest teacher there, because I'd have no phones on the kids. I just wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't allow it, because they're so distracted. They're on their phones all the time. Their phones are down here and they're looking at you and they're looking down and they're got their earphones, they've got buds in and say, no, I'm not listening to music. You know they are. So yes, it's easier to respond to other kids if they're behaving in a socially unacceptable way, versus if the phones is, I can understand that, Jennifer, I can see it. But it's very difficult to not take it personally. But I'm going to say, the minute you do, or the minute you see their behavior as a reflection of you, where it's downhill all the way, guys. They choose to behave in a certain way. If they don't say thank you, or if they don't do something, their homework, it's not my choice. It's their choice. So it's nothing to do with me. So I don't see anything they do as a reflection of me. When my 16-year-old came home, the next one day, he came home one night, the next day he wanted to speak to me, and we were moving house, and I was packing that day, and I was packing up the bathroom, and he came and he said, Mum, I need to speak to you. I'm like, we're moving tomorrow, is it urgent? He went, yeah, it's urgent, Mum. I'm like, yeah, it looks like it. I said, okay, talk to me while I'm packing away the bathroom because we're out of here in like 2 hours. And he's like, Mum, I did something really stupid last night. To cut a long story short, he'd gone out, had a couple of beers, I think. I was totally anti drinking underage. I don't condone it. I'm like, it's illegal. And he'd spray painted a fence with friends of his. Do you think I think that's right? No. Do you think that's a sign of me being a bad parent? Jennifer, do you think I'm a bad parent because my son painted a fence? No. He chose to paint the fence. Poor decision. Do I wish he hadn't? Absolutely. Is it a reflection of me? No. Absolutely not. So why would I see any behavior as a reflection of me? Right? It's their behavior. There might be times where it could be a reflection of them, but even then, it's their choice. Right? So if we see it as a reflection of us, I'm going to take it all personally. How dare you do that? What do you think the people are going to, whose house was it? In the neighborhood we were just to move to. We were moving to a neighborhood, that fence was in the neighborhood. I'm like, great, fantastic. We had to go and speak to the parents and we knew them. Was it a reflection of me? No. I couldn't take that personally and I couldn't see it as a reflection of me. I had to support him in a particularly bad choice, right? So I showed up for him supportive. I had to put packing on the hold. I had to drive him to this fence. He told me to drop him off a block away. I said, no, I want to see your art. So he went and showed me, and he'd done that, and the others had done 10 8-by-8-foot fences. 10, like an entire perimeter to a garden. So they paid for all the paint, the brushes. They had to go face the guy. They had to repaint the fence. It took them 20 hours, cost them $200 each. There were 3 of them. I could trust me, they won't do it again. What was someone said, so what was the consequence? I'm like, that was the consequence. They had to tail between their legs, go and apologize, go buy the paint, cough up the cash and the hours. That's the consequence. I didn't need to ground him. No, I want him to go out to a party next time and resist the temptation to spray paint a fence. Right? Me keeping him at home is not going to teach him that. So we have to show up non-reactive. If I'd reacted, it would have gone very differently. And of course, the guy, the man whose couple whose fence it was, my husband and I showed up and they said, he said, which one's yours? And I went, the one in the white t-shirt. And he said, he looked me in the eye. He did all the talking. The others were looking at the ground. You've raised a good kid. And I said, well, thank you, we're really sorry. And he said, it's nothing to do with you. Boys will be boys. But he was the one. So, that's what you instill in your kids, the ability to take responsibility, to own up to it, to look someone in the eye and say, I'm really sorry I did it. I'm going to make it right. He did all the right things after he'd done a very wrong thing. Does it make the wrong thing right? No. But he did what I believe he needed to do. And driven by him. Well, I drove him to the house, but it was all driven by him. But it was only like that because I showed up non-reactive and not scared in the moment. I was terrified. I'm like, oh my God, whose house was it? I was scared, but I didn't let that fear interfere with the connection we have that allowed him to sort it out. I didn't take it personally. So it's not easy to not take it personally. Marion, you could try to lose the idea that you have to be fit in or be liked every moment, because there are moments you need to step up the role rather than being a friend. Absolutely. Like There's times where your kids won't like you, and that's okay. But if you are looking to your kids for validation, if you're looking at your kids to feel good about yourself, to feel liked, to feel appreciated, to get their approval, this is all going to be very difficult, because you have to meet your own needs. You have to accept yourself, approve of yourself, validate yourself, appreciate yourself, love yourself, and reclaim your worth, so you can show up in the face of anything and not feel lesser than because of whatever's happened on the exterior, if that makes sense. But if you're worried about your kids not liking you because you need to be liked, it's going to be very hard for you to say no. You'll be the no, 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 yes, okay, just this one time. And you're giving them a very mixed message, not being consistent and not holding the limit. So really, it's all about how you show up. It's not about them living within the limit. It's how, yeah, they need to, but it's how you show up and hold the limit. Can you? Are you consistent? Can you be flexible when you need to? Can you be absolutely firm when you have to? Not negotiable. No, this one's negotiable, this one's not. It's like when we set boundaries, we're on a continuum of soft on one side and firm on the other. And I often say to parents, where do you need to be? Type in the chat box where you think you need to be. Firm, hard. Where do you need to be? There's no right, no wrong, but firm but fair. Yeah. Any others? Middle. I think it depends on the issue. Middle. Okay. So sometimes, this is why it's so hard. The middle might work for a particular situation, but being firm might work for another situation, and being really soft might work for another situation. So it is all dependent on the moment. And you need to read the moment and know this is a hard no with compassion. No, that's it. No, I understand this is hard for you, but no. You want to go out, you're coming home at 10 and we will come get you. Hard no. A week later, it might be, oh, so it's 11. Well, what's the situation? Well, mom, this is happening, the parents are there, there's going to be a firework display at 10, and it's not, and then they're having birthday cake at 10:30, and it's finishing at 11. So you might go, okay, in this situation, we'll come get you at 11, but 10 might be the overall curfew, but then you've been softer there. And it might be 10 o'clock the curfew, but she might have to come home at 9 the following Saturday because something else is happening. So it's about being consistent and being able to read the moment and mixing what softness you need with the firmness you need, and being wherever on the continuum that the moment needs you to be. That's why it's so hard. Angel, I'm not consistent and I do give in, and I know I need to set better limits and boundaries. So what to do with your boundaries? Here's a practical exercise for you to do. What is your typical default? I'm going to say holding the limits. We all know what the boundary should be. We're usually pretty good at that. We know, you know what the boundary needs to be. There's the line. It's what are your patterns around holding the line? Is it no, 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 no? Okay, just this one time. No, oh yeah, just go and do it. Yeah, sure, you can do it. You are not doing it. And you don't give in. What is your pattern? I'm talking default pattern. You have to know that intimately. And then look at what do you need to tap into. You know, who said they were giving in? Angel, she gives in a bit. So you, Angel, you need to bring a bit more what I would call masculine energy. The male energy is usually firmer, more matter of fact, a bit more, you know, step by step, this is it. And the female energy is usually a bit softer, carer, nurturer. So bring a little bit more masculine energy into your boundary, into your holding the limits. I have to bring a bit more feminine energy into holding the limits because I'm slightly more on the firm, too firm. So we're all different. But you have to know what are your patterns, and then have a strategy. And in each moment, if you can't think in the moment, what do I need to do here? Just ask for a moment. Just say, you know what? I need a moment here. And think about it. How am I going to hold this line? Where does the line need to be in this moment? But you have to know what your patterns are. Angel is no, 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 no. Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, and that's a very common pattern. So we have to know what our pattern is and be vulnerable enough to admit it if it's not what we want it to be. And then we have to actually do something. So we move towards, Angel, you can move towards being a bit more comfortable, because it's you coming down to comfortable. You probably want your kids to, you probably don't want them to hate you, right? So being a bit more comfortable with them not liking you in the moment because you've said no. And know in your heart that this is the right thing to do. So hold your heart and say, I need to do this for me and for them. This is the right thing to do. Because when you say yes to things you should say no to, you probably don't feel good about yourself. You'll feel guilty. You'll feel shame. You'll think you're a bad mom because you should have said no. So be compassionate with yourselves, everybody. Cut yourself some slack because it's not easy to get it right all the time. So be compassionate to yourself when you don't get it right, and know there's always another opportunity to try again.
Interject for just a minute. I want to really be able to give our group time to go into their little chat rooms and have a fluid adjustment if they need to, grab that cup of tea and have lunch with their peers. So what we're going to do right now is take a break. This is so good. We could probably talk all day. And Louise, you're doing an amazing job.
Sorry, I realized I should have stopped because it was, but sorry.
No, we're fine. We're going great. What I'm going to do is go ahead and break everybody into breakout rooms. On your way to your breakout room, take a moment, grab your lunch if you need it. We're going to give everybody 20 minutes in your breakout. Talk about what you've heard today. Maybe share with one another one thing that you heard that you need to be a little better at, or one thing that you really want to work at. I know in the chat someone said, man, I can't wait for my husband to see this because I want to be on the same page. That's so important. You know, so maybe that's something we can address when we get back. So we're going to spend 20 minutes, do a quick lunch break, have great conversation in your breakout rooms. When we come back, have one or two questions ready for Louise. She's happy to answer questions and we'll see where we go. And I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the breakout rooms and get those ready to go.
And I'm going to go and grab myself a cup of tea.
Yes, perfect. All right, pay attention to the room you're going to, please. And the rooms are open.
The anxiety amongst tweens and teens has escalated with the tweens. I think it's 400% increase, and teens I think is about a 300% increase in anxiety and depression. And what they found is that kids are anxious when they're on their phones, so it induces anxiety, and they're anxious when they're not on them. So it's a lose-lose for them. If they're not on their phones, they're anxious because they're not on them. But when they're on them, they don't realize that it's actually making them anxious. There's a need to fit in. There's that comparison. They compare themselves constantly to each other and everybody else. They are scared of missing out. If they're identifying with their online persona, they are getting their validation from the likes on Instagram, from the likes on their TikTok video that they've just made. So they're judging themselves based on these external criteria in the online world. So it's actually, that whole world is too fast for the prefrontal cortex. So that world inhibits, it shuts down the very area that is already AWOL during adolescence and being rewired. It's inhibiting it even more. And we know that teens are wired for impulsivity and they're wired for risk. They want that. They want to be excited and find the thrill. And where are they finding it? Online. So it's overactivating the very system in their brain we want to not be activated unless there is a real threat and real danger to their health and safety. And it's inhibiting the very area that needs to be developed. So it's not only is it wiring it for the virtual world versus the real world, but it inhibits it at the same time. And the anxiety and depression amongst teens and tweens is at an all-time high. And there's two very, very good documentaries. The Social Dilemma, I liked it. I knew most of what they were saying, but the one that I really recommend parents to watch is one called Childhood 2.0. I'll put it in here. Childhood 2.0, the living experiment. I just sent that to Sandy and not to everybody else. Let me just put that to everyone. And it's a very good documentary. It's an hour and a half. It is a website in and of itself. And basically you just need to go onto that website and you'll click play and you can watch it. It is a very, very good insight into the teenagers' lives today. And they interview a whole range of people. They interview ER doctors, psychiatrists, child psychologists, teen coaches, a group of male teens, a group of female teens. And they're all talking about the pressures that's on them and this whole rise and spike in anxiety and depression. It's really good. But I think back to your point, yeah, the earlier we can intervene, the better. And if there's anyone watching who has not yet given their child a phone, hold off. And if you're going to give them a phone and you're unsure as to what phone to get them, if you're in the US, get a GAB phone, G-A-B-B. It's a talk and text only. They can't go online on it, but I think it has access to photographs, so they can take photos. And if you're in Canada, it's called a dumb phone, D-U-M, talk and text only. And there's a couple of others coming through, and I would like to see in my lifetime a ban on phones, smartphones for kids under the age of 18. I think it should come with a health warning, like alcohol, like drugs. And I think we need to all really fight hard to allow our kids to have a childhood and not rob them of their childhood by giving them access to an online world and a world that doesn't exist. So they don't become hypnotized by a world that doesn't actually exist. That's would be the best case scenario, is don't give them a phone. If I had, elementary school age kids now, I wouldn't be giving them a phone. And when I do, I would be giving them a talk and text. And they can hate me all they want, but I would not be giving it to them. I feel very, very strongly about it. I'm passionate about it. I think we are raising a generation of kids where we have not seen the tip of the iceberg as to the damage it's actually doing. And I think the brain, we will evolve with technology, but we don't evolve fast enough. And maybe in 1,000 years, we'll get to a stage where we're all chipped and it's just this virtual world that humans happen to live in. And that will be then. But right now we're caught. We're caught. The speed at which this has happened to us is just, it's like nothing else. And the kids of this generation are caught in it. And they're being swept up in it. And as long as we are not evolving fast enough, I believe I need to preserve my kids' prefrontal cortex and allow them to develop the life skills they need, because they're still living in the real world. The real world still, they need real world experiences to build the life skills the average parent wants their kid to have. So I would delay as much as you can. If they've got it and you're really in a pickle, then you have to really take a long, hard look at it and ask yourself, what do I know I have to do here? I know I have to do it. I'm going to mention 2 other books because I couldn't not, because I think they're 3. I think they're really good. This one is by Melanie Hempy, and it's called The Screen Strong Solution. Maybe someone can type that in the box. And Hempy is Hempe. It's really short. It's very practical. I did a 12-part series on my podcast on this book. And she's a mum who had an addicted child, and whose child actually, when they said, we'll take it, either you leave or we take away your Xbox, and he left. It was bad. So this I recommend. It's a very quick read. She has a Facebook group called Screen Strong Families, which is if you want support for how you actually will somehow do some sort of detox with your kids. In other words, if you're contemplating taking devices away, then this is a great Facebook group to get support in, because it's not to be taken lightly. You know, if we think, oh, we'll just take it away, but taking it away, you've got to really know what your your child's mental health and well-being, what state are they in? Because taking away the very thing that they depend upon for life can have life-altering consequences for them. So we have to be careful about taking it away. It's quite scary to take it away. Great support here. If you do believe that a detox is necessary, you just write, that's it, I'm done. I've worked with clients who've done this. They had a 13 and 15-year-old boys, and they were so done with it. And the mum said, I couldn't afford not to. She'd lost them. She'd lost the kids. Is this book. And Victoria Dunkley is a very, very well-known doctor, psychologist, who specializes in this detox. How do we take it away, and how do we manage it? And she has a 4-week detox. This is quite radical action to take, though, and you need a lot of support if you're going to do it. But it's a great book. It's not a quick read. And then this author here, she's from Vancouver. She's from where I'm from, and she's got The Tech Solution, which is it's a good book as well. It gives you a bit of everything in terms of how to manage it. So those are the 3 kind of, and the 4th one while I'm here is this one as well, Breaking the Trance by George Lynn. That's also an interesting read. But here's the deal. You can read all of these and you can know it all and intellectually get it, but you have to be the ones that put it into practice. And it takes effort, training, but above all, it takes you to show up non-reactive in the face of something that does your head in, that is triggering you all the time. When you look over, they're back on their phones. You take the phone and say, go outside. They go outside. 3 minutes later, you look on the sofa and they're back on the sofa on their laptop. And you're thinking, how did that happen? They just cruise from device to TV. The YouTube's on TV. So it's very triggering for us. But until we can do something to contain our reactivity, we will not stand a chance of putting any of this into practice. So this is awesome, but provided you can show up non-reactive to see it through. So this is why these books are great, and they give us a whole lot of tips, but tomorrow you have to face the music. And if you can't face it from a place of non-reactivity, this information will be almost null and void, because you'll end up back in the drama and tied into the reactivity and the old patterns. So we need to be non-reactive to be able to get the boundaries and the limits in place, and then we have to see them through. So does that help you a little bit there? But it's work. It's work, but it's so rewarding to know that you are actually allowing your child to live in the real world, and that the real world is not at the expense of the virtual world.
Right, gotcha.
Are you muted there, Donna?
Muted. I'm talking to myself. I do that a lot anyway. Let's go with group number 2. Any comments, questions?
Were we group 2? Oh, okay. One thing I asked was, so handling with friends. So like when my kids have boundaries, but when their friends come over and they have no boundaries, how do you handle that without creating this tension between them and their friends, or you and your child and their friend?
So with regard to, you're talking with regard to screen time, like when their friends come to your house and you're saying no Xbox, and the friends are like, well, I want to play Xbox, that kind of thing, Jennifer?
Yeah.
I'll say this, it's your home and you are the captain of that ship. So you need to be the one steering it in the direction you want it to go. And I say that compassionately though, because I know it's hard. My eldest, I heard the kids in the playground. He's 20 now, so this was when they were 5 or 6. This was before the tsunami had hit. They said, we're not coming to your house because you don't have an Xbox, it's boring at your house. And so I didn't get the Xbox. I refused to get an Xbox. Now, do they game? They don't game that much. But I never have had a console or an Xbox in the house. That's not why they don't game. If they were going to game, they'd find a way to do it. My point is, I had to just let that go, and I had to know that the kids were not going to come to our house because there was no Xbox. But I held on to, I was not going to get an Xbox just so I could have the friends at our house. If they came to the house and they were wanting to game, then the limits that I have for our house would stand. So I would say, you guys can play on your whatever it is for an hour, but after an hour, that's it done. And I would hold the limits. And if the friends were not prepared to come off it, I would say something like this. I would say, I know you find that hard because you probably have more time on it at home, but here, this is what the limits are in this house. If you'd rather go home, I can phone your mum and I can tell your mum that you're wanting to come home because you want to play, get back onto your Xbox. And I would say it with compassion, and the kid would say, no, it's okay, don't phone my mum. Because if you're going to phone the mum and say, oh, Jack wants to come home because we don't have an Xbox. Actually, we do, but they've played for an hour and he wants to play longer, so he wants to come home. The mother's going to say, I'm not coming to get him. Make him play in the garden. I don't know of a mum who would say, sure, I'll come and get him because he wants to spend more time on his Xbox. I don't know of one. If there's a parent out there, then you know that, and that's that parent's opinion, and they can do that if they wish. But I would hold on to your rules, Jennifer. Stand true to what you value and what you know is right. And just because there's other kids who don't have boundaries and limits on their screen time, does that mean your kids don't when those kids come into your house? What's that message going to send your kids if you say, okay, you can play for as long as you want when your friends come, but when your friends go, it's back to the limits? That might be what you choose. Maybe there's a thing that if friends are over, they can play for 2 hours, the whole time of the play date, if that's what you want. But if you don't want it, then you get to be the one that decides. I'm of that belief.
I'd like to be respectful of everyone's time, and it is almost 1 o'clock. So if you need to leave, please feel free. Don't feel obligated to stay. We're going to continue and just ask a couple more questions, but we're going to wrap things up here fairly quickly. The recording, along with an email with the survey, will be sent out to you tomorrow. If you need an CEUs, or not CEUs, if you need a certificate of attendance, please make sure you say that in your evaluation survey. Again, those letters, emails will come out to you tomorrow, along with the link for this recording. You can also find this recording and all our other lunch table recordings on our website at positiveteenhealth.org. Okay, any other questions from table? All right, we'll go to our last table. Any questions, comments, feedback? All right, we're going to just open it up to the room in general before we say goodbye to Louise. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or questions that you have for her?
I'm glad that you mentioned the difference between reality and I use that a lot with my kids because when they're like, why can't I be on my electronic? Why can't I? And I say a lot about when you spend too much time on that electronic, your perception of reality is distorted. And they don't believe me. They're like, what do you mean? So everyone's perception of reality is distorted. And I'm like, if you look at the way people act right now and the interactions between human beings in general right now, it looks like the reality is distorted. Like people aren't thinking very clearly. They're thinking, I don't know. But people's interactions are not helpful for each other. It's like we don't need each other. I don't need you. So I can treat you however I want to treat you because I don't need you. And it's like I try to tell them that's distorted because we do need each other. Mm-hmm. And when you are constantly feeding yourself whatever it is you're getting from that device, now you're not in tune to what is around you.
Yeah.
And
we're disconnected from our needs. It's a very valid point, Jennifer. You know, every man, woman, and child needs to be seen, heard, understood. We need to feel like we belong, that we matter, that we're good enough, and that we're worthy. And unfortunately, what the virtual world does is it comes between us and the other. It disconnects us face to face, real time. And we have not evolved, that's what I was saying, we've not evolved to a point where we don't need that. And so at the moment we need it, but we're not getting it. So we're all struggling to be seen and heard and understood. And the kids are relating to, they think the phone is giving them the connection, but it's not. They're void of that connection. Many of them don't even know what it should feel like anymore. They're so lost. They're so disconnected from themselves and so disconnected from the real world that they don't even know what they're missing. And so their basic needs are not being met. And they then look to the wrong place to meet their needs. And it strips them of feeling worthy. It strips them of their self-esteem. You know, comparison is the thief of joy, Theodore Roosevelt. And all our kids do is compare themselves incessantly to each other online. Look at selfies. Why are they posting selfies? They're posting a selfie so someone says, you're pretty, you're amazing, you're this, you're thin, I love your hair. It's all someone else's external validation. It doesn't build self-esteem. It chips away at it actually, because we can only get self-esteem and self-worth through doing things that allow us to feel worthy. And being online doesn't give us that feeling. They think it does, but it doesn't. They're identifying with the wrong things to feel good about themselves. So they're not feeling good about themselves. So they're anxious, stressed, depressed, turning to the wrong thing to try and feel good about themselves. So, you know, the other thing with kids as well is keep the education piece and the lectures very short and sweet with them. They don't want to hear it, but you just need to say a little, a lot, rather than a lot, a little.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Mhm.
Right. Louise, is there anything else you'd like to share with our group before we end today?
No, just thank you for listening. And I hope that I've given you some sort of practical things that you can do. I always like to try and make it practical. Like, what can I do? Okay, I've heard it. What can I put into place? But you are the ones that have to put it into place. And, you know, if you need help along the way, there's lots of people you can reach out to get help, to help you in the process of making change. And, you know, I've got group coaching programs that I run. I've got online training courses. I've got a vast array of different level, different tier, different priced things that I can do to help and support you. So if any of you want more support, you reach out. If I can help, I will. If I can't, I might know of someone who can. But I would say keep training. You know, we're athletes have to train off the court and on the court, and they actually have time where they don't need to train. We are on the court, field, course, whatever it might be, 24/7, and I don't think we can ever let up on our training and the effort it takes to bring about change. And I, just because I've done what I've done doesn't mean I'm done. I can go check, I've done it. Every day I have to do it. Every day I have to remind, every day I have to show up non-reactive. And that takes effort. I have to hold myself accountable and do it. It's very easy to just fall off the wagon and stop doing it. And then I enter the pool of reactivity and it all goes pear-shaped, but more importantly, that I lose the connection that I have with my kids. So it takes effort. Keep up the training, keep those training wheels on, and keep doing the work, because you can do it. And trust that you know what you should be doing. You can do it.
You can do it, right? I love the way you have to just keep at it. You know, I started by saying I have adult children and now grandchildren, and what I knew to be true isn't always right. You have to be moldable, keep an open mind, be teachable, and show up. I think that I heard you say that over and over again. We have to show up for one another, and we especially have to show up for our kids. So thank you, Louise, for being with us today. Thank you to all of our participants for staying the course, for showing up, for engaging. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Again, watch your emails. I'll be sending out a follow-up email, and more information for next month's lunch tables will be out soon. Thank you and have a great afternoon.